Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to grecochess, the YouTube channel of chess. I'm your host, Karilas Aniziris, and in this video, we continue facing the chess.com bots, and now it's time for the last of the intermediate bots. But let me first share the screen with you to see what's happening. Look at the right part of the screen with the bots. First, we completed all the beginner bots, 15 of them, defeating all of them twice, each of them twice, once with white and once with black. We continue with the intermediate, and we have defeated most of them, except the last one. A few of them we had to try more than once, but out of the 14 that you see here, before the last one, the 12 of them, we defeated them easily, once with white and once with black. With two, we stumbled a little bit. I think it was Emir from Turkey and Wilson from forgot which country it is. Wilson from Haiti, that we needed more than once to defeat them, but eventually we overcame all of them. And now it's time for the last of the intermediate, Mateo from Argentina, who has a rating of 1400. We're going like every other bot to face him twice, once with white and once with black. Hopefully we can defeat them. And let's see now what will happen. I'm facing Mateo, and I have the white pieces, and Mateo has a black. And Mateo starts by saying, hello, chamigo. It's siesta. Let's play. Yes, Mateo, let's play. And I'm starting with my pawn to e4. That's how I usually start. I hope we see an open game today. I've never been to Sicily, but I like this opening. Yep, the Sicilian. Let's play the standard way. Avoid any of the crazy openings like the Grand Prix. So knight goes to 3. Pawn to d6. Why do they insist on putting the opening middle game before the end game? Because if it was the other way around, they would name them differently. Pawn to d4 for me now. Fine, control for the center. Taking d4, I take back on d4. Knight f6 attacks my pawn on e4, so my knight goes to c3 to protect the pawn on e4. Knight to c6 attacks my knight on d4, but my queen protects it. What can I do? Let's place my bishop on b5 to pin the knight. Pawn goes to e5, so now look what's happening. My knight takes the knight, and if he takes back, I check, and I think I win an exchange. Let's see if that's the case. Bishop to c6 check, and I'm winning the rook. So I have an extra exchange. And an extra pawn. Look at that. I have 7 versus 6 pawns, and I have 2 rooks, 2 light pieces versus 1 rook and 3 light pieces. Queen is on a8, attacking the pawn on e4. Oh, be careful. The pawn is attacked twice, both by the queen and by the knight. So better protected with my pawn going to f3. Continue developing. My bishop goes to g5. I want to exchange. I'm ahead in material. Queen on b7 attacks the pawn on b2. There are two things to do. I can either defend it, for example, if I move my pawn on b3, bishop goes to b4 for Mateo, and I'll have to fight for my knight on c3. I can also put my rook to b1, but I can even let Mateo take the pawn, but then I need to defend my knight on c3 in advance. If I put my queen on d3, Mateo takes the pawn, rook goes to b1, queen goes to a3, and I think I have a nice game. I can even take the knight on f6. Why? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to place my queen on d3 and have Mateo take the pawn if he wants. Will he? Nope. He attacks my bishop on g5. What will I do? Not sure what to do. Let's take the knight. Yes. Double his pawns. And now I'm going to castle queenside. Bishop goes to e6, but I'm going to, it attacks the pawn on a2. I'm going to stop it. See if he wants exchanges, because I'm ahead in material. If we can achieve, wow, a knight on f6, and then I win the bishop. Of course, the bishop will take back. Yes, let's take the bishop. He'll have to take back either with the king or with the queen. With the queen, I'm quite ahead in material, but now what should I do? If queen goes to d5, it's a nice central square and threatens a check on a8, and threatens the pawn on a5. Anything Mateo can do? No, it's not enough. I have more material, meaning I have an extra exchange in 2 pawns. It's that his bishop on f8 and the rook on h8 are still at the starting points, have not developed and have very little influence. Basically, Mateo only plays with the queen for now. Queen to a5 check and take the win the pawn. I wish I could exchange the queens, but not easy yet. So let's put the queen back to d5. I want another pawn. Bishop to g7. Let's start expanding my rooks. Rook goes to d3. Hopefully I can put the other rook also on the d file. And that rook goes to d1. So now I can win the pawn on d6 if Mateo does nothing, but it takes the pawn back. What can the rook do from f8? Not too much. Can I win the pawn on d6? Yes, I attack 3 times, defended only twice. And I'm going to check with my queen. Not only that, I would love to exchange queens, because then the chances of a nasty surprise become much smaller. I take d6 with a check. Take again on d6. I enjoy endgames, yes, but your endgame is not a winning now. And now, what is the situation? I have an extra exchange and 6 versus 2 pawns, 4 extra pawns. Check from d7. Doesn't let me win the bishop. If my rook goes to a7, I threaten mate from rook to go to d8. Most likely this is not going to happen. But in order to stop it, I think I'm going to win the bishop. Let's see. I don't want my bishop to be... Okay. Any chance for any nasty surprises? Mateo can check my king, but what can he do after that? Yes, exactly. Now I'm threatening mate again on d8, and no, his bishop cannot go in a square that will attack both my king and my rook. That's why I was hesitant to put my rook on a dark square until I calculated. We're going to check with the rook here to d8. So it goes back. Now I'd better be very careful for a back rank. You see that if I put, for example, my rook to a8 to threaten to win the bishop, there is a back rank possibility. So pawn goes to a3 to avoid it. Now I'm threatening to win the bishop. Yes, I won the bishop because the rook was pawn hunting. Now I have an extra rook. And as far as pawns are concerned, instead of 4 extra pawns, I have 2, but I'm glad that I have extra rook. No chance for back rank. I'm going to win the pawn on e5. Okay, you can check me. Can you defend your e5 pawn, Mateo? I don't think so. Well, not exactly, but he can win the c2 pawn. I'm going to stop him. We won the e5 pawn, good. Pawn to c3. I have 3 extra pawns. My only chance for an upset is if the h pawn somehow promotes, and that's not going to happen, and you'll see why not. Check from h8. Good. Now we also want the h pawn, so I have the chances for a surprise are very minimal. What I want to do now, what's called the lateral mate. So rook to f4, and I want to move the king towards the h. file. Now that if I put my rook on g5, I threaten mate, but then he can put his rook on h3. So first let's check from h5, send the king to the h file now. And I'm threatening to go to h4 before, not anymore. I'm going to send my rook on f8. I started getting worried about this a little bit too late. I would say, is there stalemate? There is none. So I'm going to take your rook. Next move is mate. My rook goes to h8 and it's mate. So we defeated Mateo with the white pieces, I would say quite easily. The strongest of the intermediate pots. So let's look at the game review. What does the computer think about the game? 93.8 accuracy for me, 83.8 for Mateo. And I played as if my rating was 2200 and Mateo's 2100. Well, even my 2200 is excessive to say the least, but the 2100 for Mateo is unbelievable. I wish my 2100 opponents played like that. In fact, 2100 is such a high number. I don't think I ever, maybe once or twice I faced such a strong opponent and of course lost very easily. But let's go through the details to see what happened. No brilliant moves. I had one great. Book 6 for me, 5 Mateo. Best 21 versus 18 for me. Excellent 18 each of us. Good 4 Mateo, 1 for me. Inaccuracies 1 Mateo and 1 blunder for Mateo. Let's go through the moves and we'll see what happened. Until now it is theory. You see the little booklets. I mean, this symbol here means we are following opening theory. Until here it's book. Now, what is my threat? And this threat appears many times. And everybody I've ever played against, I doubt there's any exception, every player, or at least almost every player, knows how to reply. You put your bishop on d7, because my threat is I take the knight on c6, pawn takes back if the bishop is not there, bishop checks c6, and then win at least a pawn, and most likely the rook on a8. You could put your queen on d7, you can also stop it, but why expose the king and block the bishop coming out? But Mateo decided to blunder because it's a huge blunder. You got a chance to win material through an eventual fork. I never expected this to happen, so when it happened, I was ready. Take, great, great. That is very obvious. If your opponent allows you to do it, clear capture, yes. And of course, win exchange plus a pawn. Continue the game. F3 to stop the knight from taking e4. There are two ways to do it, either with a pawn to f3. The problem is it opens diagonal h4 to e1, but can black take advantage? Nope. Bishop on f8 needs at least 3 moves to make it to h4. Queen on a8 also needs 3, at least 3 more than that to go to h4 and check. The other way you could defend it is if I had placed my queen on d2 or e2. Some d3 or e2. But why use a queen just to defend a pawn? Pawn to a5, not a bad one, but too late, I would say. Bishop to g5, yes, to the knight is not paid. There's nothing behind it, but at least to exchange the knight and be ahead. I'm already ahead material. I want exchanges. Queen to d3 protects the. Oh, well, the computer would like me to have taken the knight in advance. I was a little bit worried about giving the g file to the rook on h8 because after exchanges, the rook can go to g8 and is free along the g file. But now that my bishop's attacked, let's take it. The best move takes back. And long king castling to avoid queen taking on b2. Well, if queen takes on b2, this could be a poison pawn, but let's stop even having to think about it. Even though computer would rather have my knight go to d5, knight will go now to d5. And after black fails to do anything, I win the pawn on f6 and win the bishop. Queen takes back. Computer would rather have my king go to b1. Usually after long side queen side castling, king from c1, you send it to b1 to safeguard the a2 pawn. But since I didn't see the a2 pawn threatened, I decided to go on the attack. Takes the pawn with the check. The computer thinks the best move is to put a king on b1, although my choices are excellent. You see my advantage here is enormous. 539 you see here, 5.3 here. And now computer doesn't like that I took the pawn. But why should the rook go to b3? I don't understand. Maybe to a3 would have some point if it could go to a7. The advantage becomes more and more. Check. And now computer would rather have my pawn go to a4 instead of a3. In either case, you avoid the back rank. A4, of course, you're near a promotion, but I was hoping to win the game without needing the A to promote. Just on A4, it's not so easy to capture the pawn. Computer wants me to start playing, pushing A and B pawns for promotion, but I don't need it. Got the bishop. No, it doesn't matter how I play, I'm winning. I want the pawn at E5. I don't want any nasty surprises. What can go wrong if you're ahead in material? Two things. Either your opponent can find a mating combination out of nowhere, especially if you have background issues, or most common is find some pawn to push for promotion and either promote it or win a lot of material to stop promotion. That is why no matter how ahead you are, you have always to look if your opponent has any pawns left, especially passed pawn, and see what future they may have. We got one of them, the 8 remains, but now I'm going to win the H pawn, so no pawns for any nasty surprise, no chances for back rank, so really the only thing I have to worry is a potential stalemate. Yes, play the best until now. Do we have M's? We had M's for a few moves. Let's see when did the M's start coming in. Until now, we are 6.5 ahead. Now we are M16, meaning if I play the best way, I make the 16 moves. How many did I need? I needed 7 only, which means not that I'm a genius, but Mateo did not play the best way. M15, M14, M13, M3. So really, this move, Mateo, from M14 goes to M3, not a good one. Computer would rather have the rook go to H3. Then back rank is not so easy, of course. Not back rank, I'm saying lateral mate is called, it's not so easy. They're still going to do it somehow. M3 now, M4, M3, M2, M1, and I got it. This concludes the game against Mateo. And one more intermediate boat remains to complete this part, and it is playing Mateo against a black. Let's share the screen once again. We are going to go back to play bots. And we'll face Mateo the next video with the black pieces. If we complete Mateo the black, then time for the advanced. And the advanced start from ratings of 1500 and go all the way until 2100. See if the bots will be as strong as their rating suggests, because that's not the case. With a few exceptions, the bots were way weaker than what their listed rating would suggest. In the meantime, grecochess, the online tournament, we are one game away from the win, actually from the conclusion. You see here only one game remains, the one where Govorucha with the white is facing Barak 7 with the black. If Maxim Govorucha wins, they tie. Otherwise, with a draw or with a win, Barak 7 becomes the Greco chess champion. So that's for today's video. Thanks for watching. The viewers, the subscribers, the likes and the comments. This is Greco Chess YouTube channel. I'm your host, Kharil Anaziris, and for now, goodbye.